Ukraine today is joined by the activist of Crimea Field Mission on Human Rights, Ms. Tetiana Pechonchyk. Ms. Pechonchyk, welcome to Ukraine today.
Thank you.
Ms. Pechonchyk, you are dealing with violations of human rights in Crimea. There were various reports of abuse of the rights of pro-Ukrainian activists, of the pressure on independent media by Russia in Crimea. Can you tell us what is the current situation with the human rights in the illegally annexed peninsula?
Yes, we can confirm this situation that is reflected in many monitoring of different organizations. Our mission, Human Rights Field Mission on Human Rights, is the only initiative which works in Crimea on a permanent base, and it works since the beginning of March of last year. And recently we fixed a lot of cases of pressure on pro-Ukrainian activists like Leonid Kuzmin and other activists who were wearing Ukrainian national clothes, vyshyvanka, and they were arrested. And also there were some cases when they were forbidden to organize an action in support of Ukrainian famous poet Taras Shevchenko.
So, Ms. Pechonchyk, what you're telling right now is that if a person in Crimea wears a Ukrainian national cloth or brings out a Ukrainian national flag, that person can be arrested? On what charges?
They were not arrested, they were detained, and in several hours they were released, as well as, for example, journalists from Ukrainian TV channel. But the thing is, just to have Ukrainian symbols like flag or like vyshyvanka can be regarded as some extremism, but due to Russian legislation it's not an extremism, but they can be detained just for showing their national identity.
Yeah, obviously this is something to intimidate the pro-Ukrainian activists, this is something to intimidate independent media. Is there anything which can be done about these practices?
Well, it is difficult, as you understand, but in our work we try to cooperate with Russian lawyers who can come to Crimea and who can support and defend our activists like Alexander Kostenko and others in Crimean courts. But I think that some kind of issue to this problem could be presence of official international organizations like UN, OSCE, the Council of Europe in Crimea, because it can help to lower the pressure and the danger for local activists. But we tell about it for many months, but still, I understand some political reasons why they don't work there. But for us, as the only human rights initiative, international initiative working there, it is also a danger because we are only one, and it's very easy to suppress us and to stop our activity. And we, at the moment, felt such a signals from Russian and from Ukrainian authorities too.
What do you mean you felt the pressure from the Ukrainian authorities? The Ukrainian government doesn't want you to be there?
Well, it's an interesting situation. Maybe, as you know, in the beginning of June, the Ukrainian government accepted a new regulation of foreigners and some categories of Ukrainian citizens entering Crimea. And according to this new regulation, foreigners should receive a special permission from Ukrainian government to work in Crimea. And our mission works in such a scheme that our activists from Russia, Belarus and other countries every month come to Crimea and spend there several weeks monitoring the situation, and then we prepare reports. And for them, as foreigners who respect Ukrainian law, they should apply for this special permission. But in this regulation, there is no such a category as human rights defenders, and there is no such a reason as defending human rights. So we just cannot receive this permission in a legal way. So we cancelled our monitoring mission in July. Our last mission was in June, and now we don't know what to do.
So, Tetiana, do I understand correctly, you're only monitoring the situation with the human rights, you're not doing anything to protect these protect the human rights of the abused individuals, what exactly do you do?
Yes, of course, we try to help them in some way, but our main purpose is monitoring. But we try to give them some legal advice, or to invite or to find them some lawyers. But there is a bigger coalition which is called Initiative Group on Human Rights in Crimea, which consists of more than 20 human rights organizations from Russia and from Ukraine that united together to solve the problems that we discovered during our monitoring. And we hope this coalition works on some, some organizations from different countries can unite and work together on some specific problem like religion or migration or some other problems that we discovered during monitoring. But it is very important that we are present there, and we show to OSCE, to UN, to media, to public, all the problems being there.
Tetiana, just yesterday, the Ministry of Justice announced that they are launching some sort of electronic system of filing complaints in Crimea about human rights violations. Do you think that this system will help to somehow guarantee or protect human rights of people in Crimea?
Yes, I think this is a working mechanism, because the European Court for Human Rights is the only international organ that can push Russia or Ukraine or any other countries to respect human rights and to pay compensations for the victims. And as far as I know, in this case, we talk about the case Ukraine against Russia, and this is a big inter-country case, because normally in the European Court for Human Rights, the normal practice is when citizen make an appeal against the country. This is inter-country, and so people whose rights were violated can just join to this big case. And I think that this is a good initiative that our ministry promotes for many citizens who were victims, that they have possibility to receive some compensation.
Yeah, well, that actually was something which I was going to ask you about. How can the people who live in Crimea protect their rights in the judicial system? How can they protect in the courts? Because obviously they have to go through all instances of all courts, national courts, before applying to the European Court of Human Rights. So how this will work for the people in Crimea?
Yes, now this is a question, because we don't have any decision of European Court on Human Rights on Crimea, so that gives the clear direction how to act and how many instances should the person go through before applying to European Court. But our lawyers, for example, our colleagues from Ukraine and Helsinki Human Rights Union that work together with some Russian colleagues in this coalition, they recommend to pass at least one instance in order to apply for European Court for Human Rights.
To pass one instance of the courts in which country?
Local in Crimea. We are telling about people who live in Crimea, Crimean residents, whose rights were violated and who want to set the justice to their cases.
So basically, they have to go to the courts in Crimea, which are Russian courts, which will most likely decide against them, and then based on this decision, they can go directly to the European Court of Human Rights? So they don't have to pass any other, the Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court in Russia? Well,
at the moment, there is no clear regulation how should they act. There is a practice of different other territories being occupied, and this practice can give some hints or directions how to act. But we expect for some decisions of European Court in Strasbourg on Crimean case that can give a clear directions how the court estimates this situation.
So can you tell us a little bit more about this case of Ukraine versus Russia in the European Court of Human Rights? And this is, I understand this is something extraordinary, because usually individuals apply to the European Court of Human Rights. When was this case filed, and when can we, the most important, when can we expect the decision on this case?
Yes, it is not unique. There were some other cases when one country went to court versus another country, and I think that It is the Ministry of Justice who runs this process and who can tell you more about this case and the expected results. But in European Court for Human Rights, it can take several years to get some decision. So I don't think we should expect it in several months.
Well, in the meantime, the people living in Crimea looks like they're kind of in a legal vacuum. Ms. Pechonchyk, many thanks for joining us and talking to us. This was Volodymyr Sulhu for Ukraine Today, together with the activist of Crimea Field Mission on Human Rights, Ms. Tetiana Pechonchyk. Thank you for watching us.